Hello, everyone, and welcome to edition 3 of OMFIF's Digital Monetary Institute Journal, available from our website, omfif.org, on the 20th of August. I'm John Orchard, OMFIF's CEO. Homeworking or not, we've had a very busy year at the DMI, hundreds of attendees requesting to join the closed session roundtables and dozens of central banks doing so as well. And a clear picture is starting to emerge on the relative positions of the key central banks and on the technology providers who might help them, as well as the issues which still remain to be solved, of which there are a number, some of them quite difficult. Do get in touch with Yulia Demanova. Her details are on the screen now, if you'd like to find out how to join these sessions. Partly on account of what we've learned so far, our journal has something of an Asian focus this month. And I'm joined by journal editor Bhavin Patel and DMI chairman Phil Middleton to discuss some of the highlights. Bhavin, tell us a little bit more about why we decided to focus on Asia this month, presumably not just to align with regional holiday habits here in Europe.
Thanks, John. We have noted that elsewhere in the world, they are still looking at CBDC as a theoretical exercise, although in a more focused and practical fashion, whereas in Asia, they are actually getting on with CBDC and significant payment architecture upgrades. So the policy objectives in Asia and the need for something new has meant that Asia is moving at speed in this area. There is a lot of inertia in the West where traditional payments, industries and institutions are persisting or moving at little pace. And of course, there are a number of financial stability and policy concerns which have slowed things down for CBDCs in the West. So the region's progress in development of a central bank digital currency manifests from the population's preference towards technology, the convenience and access with mobile technology, digitalization of services, and the rapid expansion of e-commerce. But there are differences within Asia itself. So on one side, there is the movement towards an imminent use of retail CBDC, with China, of course, and maybe in a few years, Cambodia. And on the other side, where wholesale payment systems are being experimented and implemented, such as in Singapore and Thailand. So with China, the policy objective of issuing a retail CBDC was to meet the growing demand for mobile digital payments and to additionally maybe break up the duopoly of WeChat and Alipay by providing this alternative digital currency. Cambodia, who contributed in the last edition of the journal, similarly isn't looking to disrupt the incumbents, but to use and leverage off of the current payment service providers and vendors to service the public and disseminate their digital currency. Both the MAS and the Bank of Thailand highlighted in this month's journal the results from both of their wholesale experiments and described the next phases with commercial adoption and implementation to happen soon. Piyush Gupta, the CEO and director of DBS Group, spoke to OMFIF also about what the firm has learned from large tech companies, the future shape of central bank digital currencies, and also how they can help their clients adapt to digital disruption. So in Singapore, cash usage is declining, and DBS has introduced a number of digital payment solutions, which Piyush describes in the In Conversation piece in the journal. They are also experimenting with the MAS, so we will likely see some trials coming out next year. So there are many avenues of digital currency exploration in Asia, and it is evident that this region is setting the pace for the rest of the world.
Super, thanks very much. Very much looking forward to reading Piyush Gupta's piece and all those other components you just talked about. Just back on the People's Bank of China and its beta test of central bank digital currency that you just mentioned. Why do you think that's particularly significant?
I mean, this is, of course, a huge deal. It will be the first major economy where retail central bank digital currency will be issued. So this is M0 being circulated by the private sector on mobile phones, fully collateralized and with regulators pretty much having access to transaction data. You can read more about that implementation in this month's journal written by one of our colleagues, Katie Ann Wilson. But just to give a quick background on the project, the PBOC is testing its digital currency electronic payment in 4 major cities in China with the involvement of 4 large state-owned banks. So it's designed to not specifically drive out cash, but it will likely have that effect. And of course, this couldn't happen in this country or other countries in the West just yet. Privacy, technology, control, potential damage to fractional reserve banking, issues among other reasons are still being solved. We can only assume that the PBOC has found solutions to the problems the Western central banks are still contemplating. So some may argue it will set the standard for global payment systems if it does move to a cross-border system. It is already making policymakers in many of the advanced economies, no doubt in the US, to take CBDC more seriously. And so China has been a serious catalyst to debate and bring forward and drive the conversation about the CBDCs more globally, as well as with Facebook's Libra.
Phil, as Bhavin just alluded to, the rest of the world is clearly looking on with a great deal of interest to the Chinese initiative. Do you see any eventual implications beyond China's borders to that experiment?
Yes, I think so. I mean, clearly there are a lot of things that they are going to need to iron out domestically, interoperability being one of them. And that cross-border, for anybody, is going to be an issue. So there will be challenges of technology standardization, of settlement, of regulation, supervision. And we think that cross-border retail currency is likely to take somewhat longer than wholesale or large-scale transaction applications. However, you can imagine that China would want to use a digital RMB as currency in the Belt and Road Initiative. And let's say you're an African soybean farmer who's selling your soybeans to a Chinese company and perhaps buying your tractor from a Chinese merchant. The opportunity to pay using digital RMB on the smartphone could be very attractive. And you could envisage a very large part of the globe becoming a digital RMB zone. And some commentators see that as offering a very significant challenge to the dollar as a reserve currency. And even in some cases, and there's a new book out on the forthcoming global currency wars that digital currency may spark off, and you can hear more about that in a podcast interview I did with the author, which is on our website. The other interesting thing in this edition, to which again Bhavin has alluded, is the work that the Asian Development Bank, the ADB, is doing on migrant worker remittances. And this is a massive and significant problem, which COVID has exacerbated. So the ADB estimates that there's about $550 billion annually being transmitted throughout the region. India, for example, being a very large recipient. A number of the Pacific Island economies, up to 40% of GDP, is dependent on migrant worker remittances. And if some combination of distributed ledger technology, tokenized payments, central banks and smartphones operating cross-border right across the region could deliver very, very significant benefits to some of the most disadvantaged in society, to an awful lot of economies, and actually spark a massive experiment in digital retail remittances. So watch that space, I would say.
One thing that we've heard over and over again in the sessions that we've run, and there seems to be no obvious solution to it just yet, although there are technical firms trying to work it out, is the matter of privacy and anonymity. Bhavin, why is that such a recurrent theme in CBDC?
We've had a big and heated debate in our current series of discussion forums with the US public policy think tank CRCS about this very topic. So the world seems split between those who think that a CBDC should mimic all features of cash, including anonymity, and those who think it is time to move on and recognize the full potential of a CBDC, which may result in some diminution of privacy. So there is an interesting piece on that very issue from GND, arguing that cash is a public good and not a private venture. So Dr. Wolfram Seidemann from GND wrote this month about how should a public currency be designed in the digital world. And he states that for people to accept it, it must ensure users' anonymity and protect their privacy, which is the opposite of today's digital payment offerings. He also explains that there is a business case for CBDCs, but it should not be a private venture benefiting a single party. Rather, a CBDC should be designed for the common good and serve both businesses and the people. One method that China is looking at is partial anonymity. So under the PBOC's centralized management, transactional data will be disclosed to the central bank as the third party. So the bank is effectively giving up some personal data and privacy for greater control over tax evasion, terrorist financing, and money laundering. This could offer a significant ability to track currency movements and could have important implications for cross-border transactions.
And I thought actually we were going to, when I opened the journal, that we were going to see a digital euro, because the Bank of Lithuania has launched one. And I thought, how on earth did they get that past the ECB, which of course is leading the currencies thinking. And Bank of Lithuania has launched a blockchain-based collector's coin, digital coin, denominated in euros, but it costs far more to buy it because it's a numismatic edition than the face value. And created a whole new market there. So very well worth looking at. And of course, this has come as part of their digital sandbox, and is in many areas of the digital economy. In Europe, we look to the Baltics for advances. So well worth keeping an eye on, and perhaps well worth collecting as well.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you, Bhavin. Sounds like there's a lot in this month's edition, and perfect sun lounge affair, I think. So do please all go to omfif.org to download the August DMI journal. Thank you all very much for your interest, and we look forward to chatting with you next month.